and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge. Well, it's round one, and we are officially underway. A blank slate, a new season filled with hopes and dreams for glory that will most certainly be shattered. But hey, we can fantasize, but at least you can rely on us to bring the excitement for the new season with some, get this, new content and a brand new segment to unveil for 2025 very, very shortly. Liam, exciting times. And can you believe we're underway for another season? Our fifth.
I know. Our fifth season. Feels like just yesterday that we started.
I actually forgot our first season was actually just audio-based.
Yeah, I know.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And then we jumped across to doing a bit of both just because we're, multilinguist, but that doesn't make any sense. We're multi-platform content creators.
Yeah. I forget about that. I forget about the fact that I didn't have to worry about what I looked like in the first season. That was nice.
Well, you can still wear no pants because people can't see below the waist.
True.
So at least that's still a perk.
That is true.
But yeah, no longer doing it naked. Not that we did, but we could have.
You don't know. You don't know.
Exactly. They would not know.
Anyway, before we do get stuck into it, we are going to run through our socials as we always do, in case you do want to jump on YouTube and see what's happening.
Below the desk? No one knows.
No, you just must slide into Damon's DMs for that one.
Not again.
On YouTube, search SuperCoach Edge. And please don't forget to subscribe for your own sakes so that you know when our content does drop from week to week. And especially, this new segment that we've got, it's going to be an extra drop, extra bit of content. So you're going to want to subscribe so that you do get it when it does drop. On Twitter, you'll find us at @supercoach_edge, David at DamoJ88, myself at Liam Evans_95. And on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, search SuperCoach Edge, and you'll find us there. And then, of course, if you are listening to us in podcast form, if you're an OG from 5 seasons ago,
listening to us naked, they might have been naked listening to us as well.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that makes me feel. I don't know. I feel like that makes me more uncomfortable. Yeah, you'll find us on Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you can, we'd love to get a review, 5-star review if you can, and then just some comments about what you like, what you'd like to hear from us as well. But yeah, Damon, let's get into it.
Yep, shall we? Let's get into it. So obviously a lot to cover off in this episode. So let's kick it off with our quick head-to-head as we always do before we lift the curtain on our brand new segment. So as we did in the past couple of seasons, we'll be having a running tally, bit of a head-to-head between us, Liam. Always good fun, bit of banter, as the regulars that tune in from previous seasons would know. And in the past, we have also run through our teams, but this year, like I think it was last year, it was the first time that we did it. Might have been the year before. We'll have separate videos with a bit more analysis into our strategies, discussing the trades that we will be making and reviewing our teams more comprehensively. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube and turn on notifications for the audio podcast so you get notified of when they drop. And mine is up already. I know it's a bit hard on your side, Liam, as well, because it's so easy for me. I can record, I can edit it all together because I'm that sort of digital maestro, and I have all the tools at my expense. But you'll potentially be chipping in from time to time when you can.
Yeah,
but
may not be every week. May not be every week for me, guys, but every couple, hopefully.
Exactly. Well, let's have a look at how we performed. So in terms of how I went in round one, I ended up scoring a 2,114. Ranking-wise, it's never pretty, I think, unless you have a really out-of-the-box week to start. I ranked 36,122nd. Dun, dun, dun. So really, I think we should discuss this episode briefly for context. In round one last season, I started ranked 29,851st and then found myself inside the top 10K the very next week in round two, and then into the top 3 2 weeks beyond that. So if you've had a bit of a slowish start to the season, like myself, like many others out there, I'm sure, never fear, as you'll be able to make up ground very, very quickly if you have the right structure and make the necessary changes when it comes to mid-prices especially and rookie corrections. I think when it comes to primos, by and large, as we know, back them in, you've selected them for a reason, unless they've had a really bad role change that you think may persist beyond 1 week. Even then, give it another week and assess from there. But, that's kind of just a bit of perspective there. In terms of, I discussed it in my Team Talk video, which is up live now at the moment if you wanted to check it out. But ever so briefly, just to touch on the last minute moves that I made before round one. I ended up switching Zorko to Holmes in order to give me the money to upgrade the non-selected Boxall, who was in my midfield on the bench. I traded him to Finn O'Sullivan, and that move in itself thankfully only lost me 14 points in terms of the difference between Holmes and Zorko. And the other late move that I made before lockout, and I was kind of toing and froing back and forth whether or not I should stick with Baslenka. Now, that move from Holmes or Zorko to Holmes allowed me to upgrade Baslenka to Rankin. And that's, I think, in retrospect, made sense because I was bringing in a keeper, a primo, compared to Baslenka, which is obviously, I think he's going to be a stepping stone. However, he has, to his credit, actually performed quite well in round one. But that move itself lost me 19 points, believe it or not, in the difference between those two plays. But as I said, I gained a keeper. But of course, funnily enough, as fate would have it, it looks like I will need to get Baz into my team after all, after his hot start to the season. And in terms of rookies, I'm only missing Ashcroft in terms of must-have rookies, and I'm keeping a very close eye on the likes of Lindsay, Hall, and especially a bit of a smoky here, Riley Bice, who impressed me in 1.5 quarters that he played as that sub. But to see and hear about my team in greater detail, as I said, make sure to check out my first episode of Team Talk, which is on YouTube and in audio podcast format. But Liam, how did you fare?
Yeah, similar. So I scored 2,082 overall, which left me ranked around 50,443rd. As you said, I think you can definitely make ground pretty quickly. I think it's a 1-game sample size, so I think often you see, big scores, or big rankings, high rankings, like as in low ranking. You know what I mean? Big ranking numbers in the first round, and then they often get cut. And I think if you just make some smart trades, some good moves, you can bring it back pretty quickly and get yourself into the top, 10K, the top 1K pretty quickly. So that's, I'm not too concerned there. And I think it's all, the important thing is having the right structure. So as long as you're happy with your structure, that should give you some flexibility. So I did run with the 5 deep in defense. I think that was probably the main difference between what I had in my team before round 1 and where we are now. I, like you, faded Baslenka, just kind of called on him. I think if I'd seen him, we didn't get to see him in the preseason, and that kind of worried me. I didn't want to bring in a player that I didn't know what sort of the role looks like, obviously with Chris Scott as well. But I think definitely would be one that we'll be having to get in. Like you, I don't have Ashcroft. Couldn't really start him knowing that he was going to be sub. And
of course that changed, yeah.
Changes, and then that's mid-round, and it's kind of hard to shift things around to make that work. Yeah, and the same as you, I'm probably keeping an eye on Xavier, Lindsay, Max Hall. Riley Bice I was impressed with as well. I liked what I saw from him. And then just keeping an eye on some other players, some of those higher-priced rookies that we've got, obviously, and like Finn O'Sullivan, Sardis. I think I'm not too worried about either of those two at this stage. I think it's going to be fine. Parry Perryman's probably the one that's looking likely to get cut for me. Didn't love what I saw this week. I mean, I kind of was going with the consensus and got him in based off that. So I don't feel like I've got particularly strong ties to him.
Yep.
So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. Hopefully I'll get to do a team talk ep. But if not, I'll definitely be posting on Twitter with some trades before the start of round 2.
Very good. Yeah, there's obviously a few guys to keep an eye on. Like Sam DeConning's another one. We won't sort of discuss these guys in this episode because obviously we don't know how they're going to perform. Obviously in the second game, which is the indicator of break evens, everything else, and who's a must get and everything else, because we kind of need the 2-game sample size by and large. Apart from maybe a couple of guys it could prematurely get rid of based upon role, which we will of course touch on as well. But Liam, just to round things out, our head-to-head for the first time this season, I got the Truckies on this occasion, 32-point differential, 2,114 to 2,082. And I must say that I've actually broken your streak because I had to look back at how we finished in 2024. And I don't know if you recall, you probably do, but you won 7 on the trot in our head-to-head.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So to come back, because it was a whitewash at one stage, it was...
it was not going well for me.
It was something like, it was like 10 zip or something at one stage, and then you came back. So it was 16-8 in the end. But geez, those last 7, so you got 7 wins on the trot. That was incredible by you. So early part of the season, and the rivalry will heat up, no doubt, Liam. But now is the time, and we mustn't hold back any further, Liam, because the good people of the SuperCoach Edge community, you people, indeed, their ears pricked up when they heard new content, new segment. What have we got here? And we figured we'll just try and mix things up. And we're putting a little bit of a twist on our usual treatment of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's just say that we've given it a little bit of a remix, you could say, as we unveil what we're titling the Round Remix.
Captain Loophole, double score dream, best 18 heroes, that's the ultimate scheme. Super coach hustle, points on the board. Every player stats like a secret hoard. But now is the time to get your fix. It's the Super Coach Edge Round Remix. Round Remix.
So each week, in collaboration with our resident disco Stu, who likes disco music, we'll lay down an absolute banger of a track that we'll whip up, which best summarizes the round that was. Looking at Burnman, players that smashed it like, a number 1 chart-topping hit, and those that flopped like Meatloaf at the grand final. So, Liam, this week we're treated to a track titled simply No Pal Pepper of Mine, and that's P-A-L. Let's take it away. Feast your ears on this.
What's the deal? Cutting deep, yeah, it's hard to feel. Trade him out or let him stay. Football gods laugh anyway. Sam Powell, Pepper, where you at? Lost your spark, your firefly. Do we keep you or let you go? Confusion rages, don't you know? Points falling down, a heavy load, yeah, you wear the frown. Clinging tight to the hope you'll spark or toss you out into the dark. Fist to the ground, a desperate race, searching for your rightful place. Pushing tight, man, pick it up, but we've had enough. Sam Powell, Pepper, where you at? Lost your spark, your firefly. Do we keep you or let you go? Confusing rages, don't you know? Teams on edge, blood runs dry, biting nails as you pass us by. Lift your game, make the start, or we're done mending this fractured heart.
Well, Liam, how was that? The first
love
track on our untitled album yet to come. We'll have to find a name for this.
No, I'm liking Untitled.
Just untitled. Untitled. It has to be SuperCoach themed, I think. So if anyone tuning in has an idea as to what we could call this album, because it is the first track among many. It's going to be 24 tracks by the time that we finished. 24. So
Decent double-sided LP there.
exactly right. We might do it in an actual record, the old style. But did love some of the lyrics there, penned by Disco Stu. Of course, we chipped in there as well.
I love the ending. Lift your game, make the start, or we're done mending this fractured heart. Best
lyrics. Summarizes how we feel, doesn't it? As owners, because we both own Pal Pepper, and we can, like people out there who also own him, they'll be able to relate to that. So, SuperCoach points falling down, like he didn't even have any points to fall down with. But anyway, good track to start with there. And it does mean that, Liam, of course, if anyone has any,
Yes.
I guess, ideas, because like all good DJs, we do take requests. So if you have a cracker idea for a track, either in round or
Yep.
post round to, best summarize the round, hit us up via socials or on our Discord as well.
Yep.
And we will take them on board. And
Yeah, we'll flick it off to Disco Stew and he'll work his magic.
you'll get to get behind the mic. And also for those interested as well, we are happy to upload the songs separately each week, because there may be songs that kind of go a little bit longer in length, and just to condense things, we'll put it up separately. So if you want us to upload it to Spotify, so you can add it to your gym motivation playlist, which that one is pretty motivating, it must be said. Let us know.
Big fan.
Big fan. Now, with round 2 fast approaching, along with our first set of price rises, courtesy of round 0, let's jump into trade talk with The Price is Right.
The price is right.
The price is wrong, bitch.
Yes, for those tuning in for the first time, The Price is Right is the segment where we discuss potential trades, trade targets from week to week, and even discuss, whether we should be trading a player in or out at all. So just as a reminder, the early buy rounds begin this round with GWS and Gold Coast on the first buy this round in round 2. Round 3, we'll see Collingwood, Sydney, on the buy, and then Hawthorn and Essendon in round 4. On top of that, round 0 does mean that teams who played that round will be appreciating, or I guess depreciating in value, depending on how they're going, this week, except for GWS and Gold Coast players who are now on the bye. So they'll increase next week as normal. That means that actually Gold Coast won't. Gold Coast will be the week after, because they only played the one game.
That's true. Very true.
Oh my God, this is too complicated.
Have to get the whiteboard out.
I feel like that. The meme with like the woman with all like the numbers around her. Like,
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Hang on.
You're gonna feel like the Rain Man.
Yeah, Jesus, that shouldn't have tripped me out as much as it did. Anyway, does mean that if you did miss a bolter in, the likes of Finn Callahan, you don't need to trade him in this week. You can wait a week, see who you're going to trade out to do that before bringing him into your side. And likewise, you need to jump on players from, Collingwood or Sydney or Hawthorn as well, if you want to get them in before their first price rise. So with that in mind, let's jump straight into those that we do need to move on and are on the chopping block. Damon?
Yes. So first up, no real surprise here. It is that man who had a song written about him. It is Sam Powell-Pepper, not the Powell-Pepper. 180.5K as a forward, and a score of 18 just isn't going to cut it, especially when you're priced close to 200K and need to average more than a cheaper priced rookie in order to have the same price rise. Whilst his performance was ordinary, we can't solely blame him, as Port overall were absolutely putrid, like my mob in Carlton, giving the likes of Sam Powell-Pepper limited supply. And whilst you may want to punt him, keep in mind, though, that Port does play Richmond this round on their home deck and will come out breathing fire, or at least you'd hope. And given that, the prospects of Powell-Pepper are a little rosier, as he should get supply, or at least decent supply, in the forward line. And as for his last 3 games against Richmond, he's had scores of 91, 56, and 75. But, Liam, can we trust him, or is it worth biting the bullet early?
I think it depends. It depends on what you've got planned. Like, I think you've got to look ahead past these 2 weeks, or past this week into next week, and consider, are you going to be able to get everyone you need in, all the correction trades you need to make, or do you need to start making them early? If you need to start making them early, I think Sam Powell-Pepper is one that you can do that with easily. The 18's only going to sit in his rolling average for 1 week, so it's not the end of the world. Especially if he can come out and score, closer to that 91 that he scored against Richmond in one of his last 3 games. But who knows? It's tough. It's tough. But I'd be comfortable trading him out this round.
Yep. Yeah, I think you've summarised it nicely there. I'm very much the same, because I think there's 5K difference between him and Ashcroft. So if you can swing a dual PP swing, you can, do that. And it's probably an easy way to get Ashcroft in early, who, faces West Coast, mind you. So that I would be on board for. Who else do we have up next, Liam?
Yes, next up we do have Harry Perryman, 417.5k, defender eligible. And what we saw from Perryman in round one was absolute chalk and cheese compared with his preseason and round zero form. Obviously, turning from an attacking defensive midfielder into a dedicated tagger, given the run with role on Horn Francis. Did result in a score of just 62 from 13 disposals, 1 mark, and 4 tackles, which does leave much to be desired. The beauty, though, is that we do have another week to assess his role before price changes come into effect. But will he be given a run with role on, say, Ed Richards, or will McRae allow him to balance between attack and defence? It's something to ponder, especially with the likes of a cheaper SDK and Fraser impressing in the opening games with decent scores. Now, obviously, his price will go up or down this week because he's played round zero, then played round one. So it is dependent. He's got a break even of
77.
77. So it's quite high considering he did score 62 this round. So they face the Bulldogs. So there's a number of players that he could potentially have to play a run with role on. The concern that I have here for Perryman is the fact that like Collingwood have not tagged in I don't know how long. And so now that they've got him and they've run with it a little bit, I am concerned that it's going to be something that we see more often, and that does limit his scoring ability. Here's one that you could trade out this week just on the basis that he could decrease in cash. It's a hard one because obviously you're going to have to go up to someone who's probably not on the bubble this week.
That's the risky run, isn't it? It's like, well, do you kind of go early on him, read between the lines and try and work out as to what his role is going to be? Just because, it's so different from what he played in round zero, obviously, and then in the preseason. So to me, it's kind of like, well, it's a 1 game sample size where he's played, pretty much wholly negating compared to at least the preseason, that official game and round zero. So it's 2-1 where he's had that balance. So, but again, it's like, well, how many other guys are you looking to bring into your team potentially next week? Like if you're targeting like 6 plays potentially, like you're going to have to obviously use a trade on him now this week. Or you could potentially wait, and gamble on him potentially holding his price at the very least. 77 is not too bad. He almost got that in tagging Horn Francis. So, yeah.
The concern, I think, looking at his next little bit of a run, he's got the Dogs, then he's got Carlton, then he's got Sydney, Brisbane in the next 4 games, in his next 4 games. So there's potentially, the Dogs, he could be tagging Ed Richards, Carlton, he could be tagging Cripps or Walsh or anyone. Sydney, it's Heaney, it's Warner. And then the Lions, it's Lachie Neale. So there's definitely players that you could consider him playing that. Like, it's not a run, it's a run of teams that he's potentially looking at, having to play that role. So that's my concern here.
Yeah.
I don't mind flipping him if you can. The hardest thing with flipping Perryman is the fact that he's a defender only. So you're going to have to bring in a defender, and who do we trust?
Yeah, there is the immediate ones is obviously SDK and Fraser, but like Fraser, potentially new role in the midfield, which you could lose when Bont and Treloar return. Or if the next guy, which we'll chat about, potentially gets scaled up in Sanders with CBAs. And then there's guys returning, or guys that they've lost actually on the weekend. They lost a couple of guys in defence, didn't they, the Bulldogs? So it might mean that Fraser gets put back into defence. So we don't know if that's going to be a good thing or bad thing. Yeah. And then SDK, we know that he can score well depending on matchup when he's in the ruck. But we saw last year, at the drop of a hat, Scott was like, no, we're just going to put you back in defence and start playing, blitz halves or Stanley or drop you fully, in the ruck instead of SDK. So I'm a little bit sort of weary about both of those options anyway. Yeah. So that's kind of why I personally am holding off for a bit of an extra game sample size. I'm not overly confident, I must say, in Perryman, just as you mentioned, with the run of games to come and the fact that Collingwood won as emphatically as they did against Port with him in that role. I think, he did a pretty good job as well. Like Juan Francis didn't get off the chain, wasn't, a breakout play in any sense.
No.
So I am a little bit worried, not as bullish as what I was heading into the season. I wasn't foreseeing this, that's for sure, this role change. And that's what tends to happen in the in-season proper. The coaches just swing the changes annoyingly. But totally up to you as to what you want to do. Let's move on to another guy who fits on the chopping block, and it is Riley Sanders, I just spoke of there. 339.1K as a mid forward, and the Colonel. It's an appropriate nickname because he got absolutely fried by Bevo, stripped him over bulk CBAs that you'd expect him to have with regulars in Bont and Treloar out of the side. But no, instead, he was pushed forward at stages, and luckily for his owners, he was actually able to kick a couple of snags and bump his score up to 64 after it looked very dire early on. I think it was almost not even double digits at halftime. And I was, as an owner, very, very annoyed. But I must say, outside of all that, to the eye, when Sanders was played through the middle, I was watching him very, very closely. He was playing a very outside game, skirting packs and putting his hand up, asking for the ball, and having limited impact on the contested side of the game, which was very disappointing. I don't know if it was a directive from Bev. I'm just going to call him Bev now instead of Bevo because we're mates. Not that we are. But, from Bevo, I think he shafted me a fair bit. I don't know if that was a directive or if that's, lack of confidence. I don't know. But I was expecting him to throw himself in and, get the hard ball. Wasn't there at all. And like I mentioned, with Bont and Treloar to return eventually, his role longer term doesn't really fill me anyway with confidence if he's already being relegated to spend time forward. It could be one that you make an early call on, much like the other two that we just spoke about, especially if you don't own the likes of a Bailey Smith. Of course, Riley Sanders, if he is in your midfield, that is an easy swap. Likewise, if he's in your forward, because Bailey Smith is a forward mid. So if you've got a little bit of extra corn up your sleeve, or if you are able to benefit from some influx of profit via another trade, that's kind of a bit of a given. I think that's probably one that you could easily make, and one that I and myself will reveal am making. But I don't know, Liam, I don't know if there's anything that you saw different to that, but I wasn't filled with confidence. I was pretty bullish on him heading into the season, but not so much now.
I'm pretty similar to you. I would have thought he would score better. I don't know. Bevo obviously dislikes Sanders. So I'm reading between the lines. But
doesn't like fried chicken.
Yeah, apparently.
Not a fan.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's an easy swap to Bailey Smith. I mean, you could potentially give it another week for both of them. Obviously, Smith isn't on the bubble until next week anyway. And likewise, what's his name? Sanders isn't going to decrease in price until next week anyway, or whatever. So until the week after, sorry. So you can give him that extra game to see how they both go and then potentially make that move. But again, it depends on what other moves you need to make in the week after. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. I'd be pretty comfortable calling that or making that trade there. Next up, we've got Hugo Garcia, 245.8K mid forward. And it was a case of deja vu with Garcia, with Ross Lyon once again shafting him for time on ground with just 61% and a score of just 54. So that time on ground lines up with the 68, 59% he has had in his previous 3 games at AFL level. So he's only had 37% CBAs as well, which was a far cry from the 72% he had in this preseason. We were all absolutely frothing him. Yeah. We do have the luxury of waiting a week on him, but I just don't think the role looks good, and it seems that Ross just doesn't have that confidence in playing him. So I think an early correction could be justified. I mean, you could get him up to a Baslenka, again, mid-forward. You'd have to find some cash. So if you got some cash sitting around doing not much, that's a good trade-up, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. He was a guy that he just screamed burn man to me. We saw how he was utilised by Ross Lyon or lack thereof, really, in 2024 when a lot of us jumped on him and he was just left in the abyss. Wasn't given game time, wasn't given the opportunity, really, which is a big thing. And he just lost his way and wasn't able to score well. And I think at that price point, super awkward. But again, the benefit here is at a higher price point, so you can trade down or trade up, as you said, if you've got a little bit of cash to someone like a Bailey Smith, or trade down to an Ashcroft and, bank, 60 odd K to then put towards another trade. So there is upsides here out of the obviously the negative there. Let's jump into the next category, which is weight. So we do have Jaden Short here, priced at 442.3K as a defender, and the old burn man of yesteryear almost struck back with a score of 83, which was disappointing given his decent start to the game. However, we can give him a stay of execution, I think, due to the fact that Carlton's second half collapse is mostly to blame for him seeing very little of the football later in the game, as the ball really hardly made its way into Richmond's defence. And boy, did I hate watching that as a Carlton fan. Geez. He does face Port in round 2, which has returned a bit of a mixed bag in the form of 81, 64 and 103 points. But let's hope that he does bounce back, especially for those of us previously burned by him, who yet showed blind faith to jump back on him like us, Liam.
Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty comfortable giving him another week. Like, he looked good in the
100%.
first half and then absolutely fell away. But I think, as you said, it kind of came down to the fact that the ball wasn't really being kept in the Richmond backline as much as it was probably in the first quarter and second quarter. So I'm pretty comfortable that he does have the ability to bounce back. So let's hope for that, especially coming against Port. Maybe Port's going to come out breathing fire and it's going to spend a lot of time in their forward line, we hope, for us and for Jaden Short. Next up on the weight section, we've got Finn Callahan, 441.6K, mid-eligible. If it weren't for the fact that he and JDBRS are on the bye this week, he would otherwise be in the get them in category. He has looked ultra impressive in his opening 2 games of the season, scoring 144 and 104 from 33 and 31 disposals. And I think the thing that I really like is that he still managed to get that 31 disposals with Tom Green in the side. So Tom Green came back and he still managed to turn up and get 31 disposals. So I think we've also spoken about players in the past who have entered their 4th or 5th seasons and broken out. Tom Green, LDU, as the examples, and Callahan firmly fits into this category. Look to fit him into your side via a failed mid-pricer. Looking at you, Jaden Short.
Looking directly at him.
And he's looking back at me like...
he's looking back at you like he's what it is, his profile picture that he's got, his headshot.
Yes. But the bonus, I guess, here is that you can wait that extra week before having to do so. Another player that we'll just touch on briefly here is Adam Chera. He was training with the Defenders, apparently. At Carlton training, obviously, if he goes back to that sort of backline role where you get a look at, if he does, I hope he doesn't, we'll get a look at what that does to his scoring. And then, Finn Callahan Chera to Finn Callahan it's going to bank you six-ish K. So, that could be a potential play as well, unless you own both of them like me, and then in which case, I don't know.
Who knows? We'll work something out. What we will work out is maybe getting, contacts with Franco Cozzo. And I don't know, just maybe putting a bit of a knock on Michael Voss's door, bit of a courtesy, Fat Tony style, being like, "What are you thinking, Voss? What are you doing?" And just do a bit of his standover tactics, like Chera in defence again.
You broke my heart.
At three games in defence, it didn't work. What is he doing? He's not a coach. I'm sorry. Making dumb moves like that, I'm not going to go on about it because that's reserved for Blue Baggers Edge, but just dumb shit.
But I just don't get it. Like, you've got Sam Doherty, who is a decent defensive player as well, like can play in that exact role that you're making way for. Like, that Chera then goes back there for Doherty to play in the middle. I like looking at it entirely from the outside. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Dumb shit. But hey, we can play Cripps in the ruck. Yay! Our number 1 midfielder. Dumbass.
Anyway. Let's
Thanks,
move
Liam.
on.
You've set me off. You set me off.
Yeah, apologies for that. Do you want to talk about the next guy, David? Sam
Yes.
DeConning.
Zen. It is Sam DeConning, 361.9K defender, of course. And although he's a defender, he was playing in the ruck and looked good against the Saints with a score of 109, taking 41.1% of ruck contest for the Cats. And that was 44 ruck contests, with 28 being centre bounces. So he was the preferred option through the midfield for ruck contest, which is good to see. Wait and see what the role looks like this week and avoid going early, of course. De Koning is a potential trap, as we were all scared off in the preseason when he didn't look great against the likes of Draper, Bryan, and Meek. And to top it all off, we all know that good old Chris Scott, he who shall not be named, who I just named, often likes to throw the magnets around. And we saw that last year. De Koning looked good in the ruck. Next minute, he's back in defence, and he's brought back Peter Street into the ruck. I don't know if people remember Peter Street, went and played for the Bulldogs. Big, lumbering bloke. He was like 208 centimetres. Looked super dopey. He's actually now a police officer. Anyway, that's by the by. But he could potentially lean on some old timers, is my point, and completely throw SDK out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So, Liam, are you keen on him or just keeping an eye on him? I'm keeping an eye on him, and I'm keen on him, but not overly keen.
I would say I'm keeping an eye, but I'm not necessarily keen. I just think looking at the Geelong's run, they play St Kilda, so it's going to be Boyd versus Boyd and Marshall. I don't know. Marshall get injured.
Yeah, he finished the game with ice on his knee, which didn't look good.
So potential question mark there. Oscar McInerney the next week. Gawn, Riley O'Brien, Meek, TDK. Didn't do. I can't remember what he scored against them in the past.
Yeah, he scored quite well. TDK gives up a fair few points from memory.
Darcy, Briggs, so there's a potential run where it's a bit up and down because he scores well against sort of the weaker ruckman, I guess. And then those bigger, probably similar to a TDK in a sense. Except true. TDK is probably more capable of scoring. Well, even against those big brute ruckmen. So I'm probably watching him this week, but I'm not necessarily jumping on him straight away because I think we all got scared off, and I think there's a reason why we got scared off, and I think we need to consider that.
Yep.
Next up, finally, we've got in the weight category, we've got Matt Flynn, 261.9K, obviously ruck in most people's flex, I hope. Please don't have him at R2. Obviously too late now, but what are you doing? What are you doing? Flynn didn't quite meet the lofty expectations of many owners with a score of 87. But let's not forget that Witts was one of the more restrictive ruckmen in 2024, and it's no surprise that Flynn got absolutely monstered, registering just 13 hitouts, yet conceding 68 to Witts. But then again, we have to remember Witts is no slouch, so just keep that in perspective. I think also the fact that he got absolutely towed up but still managed an 87, I'm pretty happy. I'd be happy enough with that.
100%.
It shows that he has a floor potentially, and potentially, on the other side, a good ceiling if he can not get monstered.
Yeah.
The other stat I think as well that can give us a bit of perspective and is definitely a positive is the fact that he took 74% of the ruck contests with young Archer Reed taking just the 26. Remember, an average of 80 will net us a profit of 150K, and with some spike scores along the way, it should fast track things. But again, depends on your expectations for his scoring. Next week, West Coast face off against Brisbane. That's in round 2, who he has scored 89 as the solo ruck and 45 in ruck share, and then 85 as the sole ruck again. I think there's a lot of worry that Bailey Williams is going to come in and take his spot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like the West Coast has used him and not liked having to use him for so long that I feel like they're going to give Flynn at least a short run to give him that chance. So I'm not too concerned. I don't think they can bring in Bailey Williams and have Archer Reed and have Flynn. I think they'd be I just don't think it offers enough upside in the other roles. Where are they going to play?
Yeah.
So I think Flynn's probably safe. Watch him. If he's not, he's a downgrade option or a stepping stone to get, a Bailey Smith if you've got some cash.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'm kind of I'm not really worried at all. I must say, people are kind of screaming to the heavens, being like, "Oh, the sky is falling," but it's not that bad. I don't think. As you said there, it's kind of perspective in terms of matchups, and it always happens. Players don't match, especially in the ruck. Like there's a kind of a bit of a trend there in the rucks, even more so compared to other lines where like guys are just absolutely dominant depending on matchups, and which is definitely one of those players. However, with Waterman going down injured, I don't know what the outlook is there.
Yeah,
It
that's a fair
may
point.
prompt them to potentially bring in Bailey Williams as a forward anyway. And does that then open up an opportunity for them to do a bit of a ruck share? I don't know, but I think as you said there, like surely they're going to give, Flynn a bit more than one game sample size
You'd hope.
of an opportunity to prove himself, because he was kind of earmarked as the number one ruckman across the preseason. And with that, those are kind of the plans that they were adopting for the season proper. So off the back of one game, I can't see them making wholesale changes to the point where Flynn's dropped, like some are suggesting, and Bailey Williams is coming in. So, we'll wait and see. Of course, funny things have happened, so we can't say definitively, but I think I'm quite confident in sticking with good old Ian like Flynn, and we can assess from there.
Agreed.
Well, let's move on to get them in, and no surprise here. The only player that we have at the moment is Bailey Smith, 309.2k mid forward, and Smith looked good, real good. He scored a whopping 147 at a rate of 1.36 points per minute on debut for the Cats via 32 disposals, 5 marks, 5 tackles, and 1 goal won. But best of all, he wasn't relying upon CBAs to score, with just 26% CBAs, as he did most of his damage roaming the field in more of that wing type role. And it was very much a Bont-like game in terms of how easily he scored. I don't know if you were watching the game or at least saw the scores in game, but his scoring just kept going up, and his disposal wasn't the sharpest. It kind of hasn't been a feature of his game, where he tends to turn the ball over and shank kicks here and there. But he had 15 contested possessions, 12 score involvements, and 1 percenters with 12 ground ball gets and 26 pressure acts, which was, I think, almost the game high, or at least the second highest. So off the back of those little parts of the game there, it all added up to that high score, which Bont is well renowned for himself. And he looks a tantalising prospect at this early stage. And with an ownership of 60.8%, it is really hard to resist bringing him in with the fear that he could potentially score highly again. And if you don't have him, you'll fall behind given that high ownership. And I think for me, that's kind of the reason why I'm going to be pulling the trigger on him. Compared to traditionally, if he had a lower ownership, I would kind of be more willing to give that extra weak sample size look. But if he does go big again, I was just lucky in the fact that the player that I had in his place in Rankin scored almost as much as him. So I only lost, I think it was 19 points or something difference. But if that was to happen again, and say Rankin had, a shit score and Baslenka went crazy again, I would be losing out to 60.8% of the competition, or at least those that own, Rankin and whatnot and other solid players around him. So for me, that's the reason why I am bringing him in. But I can, at the same time, understand if you are a little bit hesitant to bring him in off a one-game sample size. Again, it comes down to what players you want to trade out. And for me, I see more upside in Bailey Smith compared to Sanders. And that's what I planned from in the outset, to have enough cash there in the bank to make that move, that switch with one trade. So I'm glad that I've kind of planned for it, but other people may not have and may need to use potentially 2 trades to afford that switch of a different player. Liam, what are your thoughts just quickly around Baslenka? Are you getting him in or waiting a week?
I don't know. I'm a bit torn. I want to get him in this week. It's just hard to move players around. Like, I think I'm probably going to trade out Perryman to get him in, and that probably means I have to trade out Power Pepper to do that, which I don't have a concern. I'm not worried about trading out Power Pepper. Content doing that. But the thing that I kind of just look at with Smith, and I think it's been raised by the Squadfather, is that he was playing wing on a narrow ground. So that does, to an extent, potentially bring you closer into the
action,
to the action, whereas potentially on a bigger ground with actual wings as opposed to GMHBA, which doesn't.
It's like a corridor.
Yeah, like he potentially has a bit more space and he's not necessarily as close to the contest. And so whether that affects his scoring, I think though there's the two sides where you can sort of anti-pod him in a sense
Yep.
if you um you know don't
Trade him
bring him in.
virtually. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just feel like there's probably more upside to starting him. Or not starting him, sorry, to trading him in if you don't already have him.
Yep.
So that's where I'm kind of leaning. I am wanting to get him in. I think the 147 at this stage is probably a ceiling, absolute ceiling. Like, I don't think we
Yeah.
can't expect that week to week. I think
No.
it's probably an out of the box score. You're probably looking at maybe him scoring hundreds.
Mm.
Um, but at this stage, I mean, his break even is super low with that one game. I think it's 2 off memory or something like that. Um, yeah, his break even is -2 already off the one score.
Yeah,
So
well.
yeah, it should drop even further and he'll make plenty of cash. So definitely one to consider. Let's move on to the guys that are on the bubble. So these are players who this round is their, I guess, as rookies or rookie priced players. They are about to go up in cash. So first up, we do have Ben Patton, 133.4k, defender forward eligible, has the break even of -36. Scored just the 43 in his second game, following on from his round 0 score of 67. Most concerningly, though, he was subbed in a game, so could potentially get dropped. But if he does manage to play with a break even of -36, he does have the potential to make us bank. With the emergence of Riley Bice, it doesn't really bode well for Patton either, but we'll just have to wait and see how things turn out when team sheets are announced. So, yeah, probably not one that I'd be trading in if you missed him
Mm.
at this stage for me personally. I don't think it's worth it.
No. No, exactly right. And that's the thing that he could be dropped. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, a reminder that Sydney, they have the bye in round 3 as well. So you don't necessarily need to trade him out, even if he is dropped. You can almost wait a week and reassess from there. Speaking of his teammate, it is also Corey Warner, 148.7k as a forward, has a -39 break even and scored a 50 in round 0 and then managed a 72 consisting of 15 disposals, 6 marks and 2 goals too in round 1, which sees him with that juicy low break even. Has never been really a renowned scorer historically, however, so most likely will be a slow burn, but looks as though he has a half decent job security at the very least. But in having said that, one thing that looms over his head, however, is the fact that he has been sub in 6 of his 11 career games. But escaping the sub in his opening 2 games should give a little bit of confidence, especially under new coach Dean Cox, because of course Horse was the one that was handing that sub vest to Corey Warner for a majority of his career to date. But something to ponder. I don't think he's a must-have. It was discussed, or someone brought it up in our Discord, if he is a must-get. I don't think he is. There's another guy as well who we can kind of mention here. Don't really need to discuss him at great length. It is Ned Long. 200.9k, has a -31 break even, scored that 113, which looks really good in isolation against Port Adelaide. But again, asterisks there. Collingwood absolutely smashed Port Adelaide, so they had high scores across the park. And to counter that, in round 0, had a 30, and obviously as the sub. So has been the sub for majority of his time at the Pies as well. So another player who I wouldn't really be confident in bringing into your team, especially at that high price point, 200.9k. Spend that money, better use on Levi Ashcroft, and even Lindsay, Xavier Lindsay as well, the bloke with 2 first names. So just have a little bit of hesitancy about it. Don't just see the one high score and be like, that's it, got to get him in, because in all likelihood, Ned Long could be the sub, because I think potentially De Goey may be making his way back, I have heard. So that will relegate him, or say a Sullivan or one of those other guys to that sub vest. Well, we're not going to have a traditional I guts to know for the first episode, but we will, of course, try and bring it back for next round. So we will open the mic to the community to send in any comments and questions they may have that we'll address in the I Guts to Know segment. But on our Discord, our number 1 ticket holder, we couldn't deny him. He slid into my DMs, and this is the lengths that he went to, because he said, Hello, boss. I'm getting in early. I guts to know. Well, apologies, Adam. It isn't a gots to know, but we will treat it as sort of a mini gots to know. He said, I want yours and Liam's opinion of round one's most traded, most popular trade outs. Is it a bit of follow the leader and seeing other people do it, or even newbies to Supercoach? Well, I think Liam, he's kind of answered his own question there because
Yeah.
if you look at the trade ins and trade outs, it's kind of a common theme there. Like I think Lockie Neal was was among the most traded out, which is just it kind of gives you an insight into those probably more inexperienced super coaches out there because as we know, you don't be trading out primos off the back of one game, especially considering he was tagged and especially considering that Brisbane are
He
playing
faces
West Coast
the Eagles.
and he's going to absolutely smash it, who he has done so in the past. So just going through the top, I guess, 5 trade outs. Perryman, we've discussed that. Pal Pepper. Sartis, I think,
Those
is a player
two-
that,
Yeah, the first two I think I can see fair reason in. Like
Yep.
Perryman potentially drops in cash. And Pal Pepper, I mean, yeah, we discussed them both. So I think they're both fair.
yep. Sartis, who you can speak to as well, Liam, but we discussed kind of anyway in the Discord, just with regards to the fact that he had low time on ground, but
Yep.
his CBAs were actually quite pleasing.
Yep.
So there is upside there with the extra time on ground. I think you mentioned Redmond as well was playing a bit
Yeah,
of a
so
negating
Redmond
role.
was playing midfield CBAs, which obviously was a spanner that we didn't get to see in the works, during the preseason. I don't think that'll persist. He didn't do it in the second half. I think it was just to sort of play a sort of negating role over, Newcomb and Day, particularly probably Day if they've decided to roll forward from the stoppage. But yeah, so I'm not too worried. I think that's where Sardis probably lost a lot of his CBAs in the start of the match. And I think without Redmond, I think he gets more. And I think he scored 50 off memory, off the top of my head. And so I think if you extrapolate that out, across the game, that he probably can get close to a 70 or 75
Yep.
with that
And
increased opportunity.
Exactly. And that's the thing. The opportunity was the only thing holding him back because he had the role. 61% CBAs, which was the second most behind Caldwell with 67.
Yeah.
So again, roles there, which is the main thing. Opportunity will come. And as you said, probably structurally, it was just an out of the box type thing that Scott pulled and was channeling his twin brother with a bit of a random move.
So yeah, I would definitely hold him for another week.
Yep.
See how he
That is the
goes.
verdict.
I don't think there's a purpose in. I mean, you could trade him out to obviously like an Ashcroft, but again, I think you want to see Ashcroft again to an extent.
right.
Like I think there's swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. Outside of that, so he is the third most traded out, which again is kind of just, keep your powder dry. So another week on him. Sanders, I spoke about him. It's kind of like a bit of a 50-50, but I think in terms of what I saw with the role, not good enough. So that's kind of justified. But Lockie Neal is the 5th most traded out. That is kind of what Adam's referring to there, that the rusted on super coaches out there would know not to trade him out. You back him in. You've chosen him for a reason. One game doesn't, make an entire season. So there's actually is 2.5% traded out, which equates to 4,360 coaches trading him out at the moment. So yeah, it kind of gives an insight into potentially people seeing that as well and being like, oh, well, maybe I should trade him out, like those inexperienced coaches out there. If you are one of those coaches that are new to Supercoach and you do own Neal, we implore you, keep Neal.
Yeah, please
do not
keep
trade
him
out.
at least for another week. At least another week.
Yep, exactly. There's no harm in doing so anyway, outside of all that, because price changes don't come into effect until the week after.
And I think when we're going to talk about Neal in I'm the Captain Now, just as a little spoiler, just because, there's some stats that I think are interesting in terms of his scores against them that will be good for us to talk about. But even I know we were going to talk about the top 5, but even if you go out to 10, the top 10, the next 5 that are being traded out, Hugo Garcia, I can accept that, fair enough. James Leake, Fino Sullivan, Harvey Langford, and Sid Draper. Now, I just feel like you're dropping 4 rookies who, you should give another go to. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me there. I mean, Leake's obviously on the bye this week, but would typically be on the bubble. O'Sullivan, I mean, the only one there I can kind of understand is Sid Draper, but to be perfectly honest, you shouldn't have started him.
No, exactly.
We spoke at length about how he was probably going to be, managed
Sub
to
risk.
start the season. So yeah, I just think
Yep.
you gotta keep your powder dry a little bit. Obviously, you want to make corrective trades where you can, and keep in mind that next week and the week after are going to be some up. It's going to be upgrade season. Sorry, not upgrade, corrective trade season. Um, so you want to make sure you can manage it, but I'd also just be mindful of not using one game as your sample size.
Yep. Spot on. That hits the nail on the head. Well, Liam, with that, shall we shift into I'm the captain now?
Look at me. I'm the captain now.
Oh, chills.
Yeah, it's back. It's back for another season. Unfortunately, apologies in advance to those people tuning in, being like, we hope that. I wonder if there's many people out there that thought at the top of the episode they thought maybe it's they're scrapping I'm the captain now, and that's the new segment, or rebranding it or something. But people love I'm the captain now just so much.
I love it. It's my
But- and we-
favorite.
Exactly, and if you want to, again, we did it at some point the previous season. If you want to send in your rendition of I'm the Captain Now, please do so. We will work it in as that little audio sting. So you can do so via our socials, Discord, all that sort of hoopla. So get to it. But Liam, I'm the captain now. I hand the captain's hat over to you.
Thank you. We're going to kick off. Actually, no, I'm going to just quickly run through. So obviously, in I'm the captain now, we do chat about VC and C options, just so you all know. Got the upcoming round of Supercoach. We scrounge through the data. We find the best options for you to consider. This week, we've got 4. Obviously, there's many, many more that you could consider for your VC and C, but we just wanted to narrow it down to sort of our favorite options.
Yeah.
Based off, past scores, past
Trends. Yep.
trends, yep, all that kind of stuff. So first up, we do have Tom De Koning. Only played the 2 games against the Hawks, and hasn't played them for a couple of years. So take his average of 53 from scores of 51 and 55 with a very truckload of salt, I'd say. I think we've seen what he can do. We've seen him be able to score massively. Obviously scored 148 on Thursday against the Tigers. Could he go similarly against Meek? Potentially. I think he's a great VC option playing on Thursday night. Obviously we concerned, Meek's probably similar to Nank in the sense of being sort of that, more of a brute kind of style ruckman, bigger style than sort of a Tom De Koning. But I do think that De Koning can score well. So I would be locking him in as a VC if you've got him.
Yep. Exactly. And you made mention of it there, like those scores came from quite a few years ago. It was in 2022 when he was sharing the ruck with Pitt, and he was actually only had 35% of the ruck contests, and he was largely playing more up forward. And 2021 as well, where he only had 34% ruck hit-outs and was playing, again, up forward. So you can't really take those 2 games with any sort of value. So off the back of that, you can go off his recent scoreline. And I think he's definitely a very nice option, especially first up on the Thursday. Whack the VC on him and go from there. Next up, we have another ruckman in Tristan Cherry. And the last 3 against the Ds, he's had 111, 90, and a 71 for an average of 90.67, though we should only really consider the 111 as that was from his breakout season. Cherry, he pumped out a 122 against the big English breakfast and feels like a safe enough option. Carried on that form, tackling like crazy. I must admit, I was actually expecting a little bit of a higher score than that, but I think he kind of took the foot off the pedal, and he was a little bit sore at one stage as well. I was like, oh, no, please don't go down injured.
Yeah.
He may have landed awkwardly or something, but played out the game, and nothing was spoken about it. So, I think he's a definitely nice option.
Yep, love it. Next up, we do have Dane Zorko. His last 3 games against the Eagles read 93, 63, and 123. That's for an average of 93. It's not the best, but we did see him at his damaging best against the Swans with a score of 139. The question, though, will the ball be in Brisbane's backline enough to warrant the selection of him as probably a C because he's playing on Sunday. So it would be tough. It's a hard one because everything says that he should score well, but if the ball's not down there like it was for short, there's no points for him to get.
Exactly. I think he's a half decent option, as you said. But yeah, again, it might be a case of Jaden Short. If the ball isn't down there in Brisbane's defence, he might have to push up the ground, which I think he kind of did anyway on the weekend.
Yeah,
he was
I'm
pushed
not
up
too
forward,
worried
kicked
about
a couple
it.
of goals.
Yeah.
So he's got that in his arsenal. So yeah, might still be a nice selection. But to round things out, we have the man we spoke of that is apparently being traded out by the top 5 of the trade outs. It is Lachie Neale. And he's a bit of a pot option now, as most actually, believe it or not, will shy away due to that score of just 41 against the Swans, which is funny enough to say, but it does happen. Recency bias is a big, big thing in SuperCoach. And unless you're a seasoned SuperCoacher and you look beneath the surface, you look at the extra numbers as we do here, as we supply them to you, you won't know any different. But he has scored in his previous encounters against the Eagles, 143, 142, and 123 in his last 3 games for an average of 136. And if we extend that out and we go back to 2016 when he was actually still at Freo, that was his last sub 100 against them. So he's been able to score quite well, matchup after matchup. So he is in line for a very nice score.
Yeah, and just to read out those scores, so it's 143, 142, 123, 133, 166, 127, 151, 120, 124, 113, and then 2016, as we said, 194. And even then, before that, he'd scored 170 against them, a 73, a 119, and an 85, and then a 65 in his rookie year. So,
Jeebus. That's a case of like, stop, you're already dead.
So if you do have him, I just lock the C on him almost.
Yeah, 100%. Lock it in.
Locky it in.
Oh, very good. I like that, Liam. You've done well. Well, with that, let's get into our head-to-head tips. Of course, this is our head-to-head when it comes to captaincy selections, which once again makes a return, of course, in 2025. Last season, you were the victor, Liam.
I was.
So you finished 13 wins to mine 9. Liam, you have the chocolates in our head-to-head for AIMS at Capitan now. So I'm going to stop you going back to back. I'm going to try and take both of these head-to-heads out comprehensively.
Doesn't happen.
We'll have to wait and see. Well, Liam, I think you can pick first.
Ugh, I hate picking first.
Why?
Because I don't know. I don't like picking first this early in the season because I do have so much recency bias.
Yes.
To me, it's probably between TDK and Neil.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just lock in Neil. I'm gonna lucky him as I said.
Lachie Neale in. Yep, exactly. Well, I was expecting that. If you went to go for him, it would have been equivalent to you passing over him with the number 1 pick. And I would have been waiting with open hands, like Carlton with Jagger Smith, or so I hope. So I'm going to be selecting that other man that you mentioned in TDK. He is someone that, I could kind of go for Cherry as well, but I think I'm going to go TDK as my own VC. So I'm hoping
likewise
with that the faith gets him across the line there. Otherwise, I would have gone for Cherry. Zorko, to a lesser extent. But with that brings us to the end of the show, Liam. Our first in-season official episode.
Fun.
But before we go, where can our listeners, the good people, the you people of the SuperCoach Edge community, find us across socials?
Yeah, you people, search us on YouTube. You'll find us at SuperCoach Edge. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear when our content drops and, get some absolute bangers in your playlist. With, what is it? What was the song? I can't remember the title, sorry.
It was no Pal Pepper of mine.
Oh, no Pal.
Had to work the Pal Pepper in there, little reference to BT.
Absolute banger. Make sure you get around it. You'll get to hear it on YouTube, especially if you do subscribe. You get to hear it first. Exclusive. On Twitter, you'll find us at @supercoach_edge, Damon at DamoJ88, myself at Liam Evans _95. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up across those handles. On Facebook, Insta, and TikTok, search SuperCoach Edge. You'll find us there. And again, if you want to listen to us in podcast form, Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you listen.
Exactly.
Please
and string.
review us.
Yes, exactly right. I think the other thing we've got to mention, which we don't have to go into detail with, but go and check out my Team Talk episode, because it's something we haven't discussed here, but I do discuss in a little bit of a greater detail in my video. Just it's easier to explain as well with the visual of my team.
Yep.
But those guys that are on the bye at the moment, you can use them as a bit of a free look for players off the bench. So put the emergency on a player that's playing early. If they kill it, leave things as are. If you have that player on the bye on field, if they spot it, then bring on another rookie on field in place of that player that's on the bye. But check out my Team Talk video. Visually, you'll be able to see the example that I'm giving with Stone and Callahan in my team, and go from there. And also,
Love it.
Don't forget to jump into our free open league if you haven't done so already, with the league code being 623082. And of course, the overall winner will receive a SuperCoach Championship ring that you too can put on your finger, parade around, and be like, check out the bling ring, because that's going to get you the ladies. It's going to get you the handsome men if you're of the other persuasion, or of that persuasion, whatever way you want to swing. But Liam, before I dig myself into any further holes, shall we end the episode?
I just let that go. I just let it. I wanted to see what journey you took us on there.
I know. I was going on a journey and I stopped myself short because I saw the Yellow Brick Road and I didn't want to wander down it. And it was going to take me to other places, and I would have gone to holes that I don't want to venture. Rabbit holes like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I mean, it is a nice piece of bling, I will say.
It is, yes.
I do want, my goal is to win. I mean, win one would be nice, but just to win enough to just wear on every finger, like just
exactly,
just, you know.
Yeah, be a gangster, and then you like drive around with a car with hydraulics and stuff that's like bouncing on the street.
Yeah, that's it.
And then you can play. Then you can play on like full blast in your stereo in your car. Each of the tracks that we're releasing every single week, the bangers, No Pal Pepper of Mine, the number one hit that's going to rocket to number one on the charts.
It will.
All that sort of stuff. It will. No doubt about it.
But let's round out this episode, Dave,
let's do it. Thank you, Liam, for joining me. Of course, first episode for season 2025. Thank you to the you people of the SuperCoach Edge community for tuning in yet again. We will be back to do it all again. Hopefully you had a fantastic round one score. And if not, hey, there's always next week. We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.